Everyone thinks that women are crazy when they hit perimenopause or menopause. The truth is, we've always been crazy. We just hide it until we realize that hiding it is killing us. Because crazy is the only sane response to a world that treats you like an object with a shelf life. No, you are not listening to the last episode. I did reuse that paragraph again because it's worth repeating and it's pertinent to this episode. Hi, I'm your host, Naomi. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Mosaic in Progress. You are probably going to hear my dog in the background. He decided he needed to come up to the recording studio with me today, so apologies if that's bothersome to you. He's just being a good boy, laying back there, sighing very frequently. Today we're going to talk about misogyny and internalized misogyny and a lot of current events related to that, both in the public spectrum and my personal life. I have recently been realizing that I do not have the capacity to continue being polite in the face of disrespect like I once did. And let me expound on that a little more. As a woman living in a patriarchal society, we are expected to laugh at the misogynistic jokes, or at the very least be quiet. We are expected to overlook it when a man is being condescending to us or mansplaining to us. We are just expected to be quiet and nod politely, like he's doing us a favor, when in fact he is treating us like an idiot, and we're supposed to be grateful for that. And there are so many things that I just have no patience for anymore. I have no patience for pretending that something was a joke when it wasn't. I have no patience for pretending I am receiving a compliment when I'm being objectified. I have no patience for being talked down to and expected to act like someone is doing me a favor or just explaining something and trying to be helpful. And I found myself having a visceral reaction the other day to an old friend of mine over-explaining to me why I probably had not received any job offers yet because it was the holiday season. Like I didn't know that. Like I'm not a middle-aged woman who's been in the job market since my early 20s. It was insulting. And as I was trying to calm myself down and not react the way I wanted to, which was to say, I know that, I'm not an idiot, I examined his words and the probable meaning behind them, and that it made me realize that this is what I've done my whole life, is just politely accept these helpful comments that are not really helpful if you get to the bottom of it. Sure, on the surface they may look like they're trying to be helpful, but you don't extend help to someone who's got it. Someone who's an amateur at the gym is not going to go up to a bodybuilder and try to give them tips on how to lift weight, unless they're extremely arrogant or stupid. You're just not going to. Someone who has no idea what they're doing is not going to go up to someone who obviously knows what they're doing and try to help them. They're not going to share knowledge with someone who very clearly knows what they're doing. And this is the root of why so many men try to help women by explaining things to them, is because they think we don't know anything. They think that they have so much more knowledge than us. And so they're going to bestow upon us their knowledge and their wealth of experience that we obviously don't have. And when you view it from that lens, the lens that no one helps someone who obviously knows what they're doing, or offers help to someone who obviously knows what they're doing, every bit of mansplaining becomes infuriating. And we can talk a lot about what perspective you choose to have and how you choose to view things. But the fact of the matter is that there is an epidemic of men who think that they need to explain things to women like women don't have the knowledge that they do. And it's not new, it's not small, it's not infrequent. It is constant. I promise you, every woman has countless stories, and I do mean countless. Each woman, countless stories of men over explaining things to her that she already knew. And we're just supposed to silently accept that because they're just trying to be helpful. If some guy who had no idea what he's doing walked up to a bodybuilder at the gym and tried to tell him how to lift weights, he would get laughed out of the gym. They wouldn't put up with that. No man would put up with being talked down to like that, with being condescended to like that. But women are expected to. We are expected to be polite. We are expected to say thank you when we're being objectified. We can't just exist in society. We have to accept all of the objectification that men want to put toward us, whether it's in hobby groups or just out in the world, whatever. That we have to accept being told how pretty we are and how beautiful we are, when that was never the topic of the conversation. And we're just supposed to smile and say thank you. And that might sound like I'm being overly dramatic. It's just a compliment, but it's not. If someone is sharing knowledge or participating in a project and you interrupt what they're doing to tell them how attractive they are, you take the focus away from them and what they're doing and change it into their worth as a sex object, their attractiveness. It's one thing to give a compliment to someone who you know or who you might just be meeting, a sort of off-the-cuff comment, but to take the conversation away from whatever the conversation was, to interrupt the conversation, to compliment someone's appearance, is disrespectful. But we're just supposed to say thank you and be grateful that a man found us attractive. It's becoming increasingly enraging to me how women are diminished to nothing more than the worth of their bodies as men deem them worthy. Their attractiveness to men. And as 90s fashion is coming back in vogue, so is the anorexic look of the 90s, and Ozempic certainly has helped that, and other GLP-1s that are being prescribed en masse for weight loss without any real concern for the side effects and long-term effects of these drugs. And I keep seeing all these comments online about different celebrities and expressing concern for them, saying it looks like they have an eating disorder and people are just concerned. And I would like for you to take a moment, if you are one of those people, and ask what your motive actually is. And I say this with love, because if you're commenting online saying you're concerned for Ariana Grande or whoever, and how terrible she looks now and unhealthy she looks now, and you're just worried for her health. Are you? And why are you? Do you know her personally? And you can see someone from afar and have no personal interaction with them and have some passing concern for sure. But are your comments online doing anything to help her? Are they doing anything to help anyone else? I promise you they aren't. As someone who had undiagnosed anorexia in my childhood and teens, hearing people talk about how awful someone looks when they're skinny definitely doesn't make it better. I promise. And it's the way that it's talked about. It is the way that the conversation goes. It's not that people are talking about it. It is the way that it is being talked about. And it is how awful they look. And that is pretty much the end and beginning of the conversation. Just they look awful, they look anorexic, they need help. With no ability to actually get them help and no connection with them to be able to reach out and provide help. So we're spending our time worrying about people who we don't know and talking about it in ways that the people that we do know who may have similar problems are not going to feel like you are a safe person that they can reach out to for help. I can't count how many times people said things to me like, you just need to eat a cheeseburger. And I ate everything that I could. I just could not eat much. My appetite was so suppressed because of chronic stress from living in an abusive home that I physically had almost no appetite. And it breaks my heart now to hear people say that when looking at pictures of me from that time period. Oh, you needed to eat a cheeseburger. It hurts. It hurts just as much now as it did then, because what I needed was to be safe, and I wasn't. And all people see is my appearance, and you needed to eat a cheeseburger says your appearance is not good enough or was not good enough. It is a judgment of my appearance, which was directly a result of circumstances that were not in my control. And I think that we really don't grasp as a society how many women are in circumstances beyond their control. And I'm speaking specifically of our second lady, and I'm sure I'm going to get some heat for this one, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me, but I recognize the body language of an abused woman, and I saw the body language between her and Vice President J.D. Vance at Jimmy Carter's funeral. I recognized that. I remember those same body languages between my dad and my mom and me and my sisters. That head whip around when someone says something that he doesn't like to make sure that you are reacting appropriately or remaining non-reactive. And he watched her reaction. And she sat there, eyes forward, barely blinking, and I could see the terror in her eyes. And everyone says, oh, she could get away, she could get away. Usha Vance is never going to hear you say that, but the women in your life in abusive relationships are. The ones who hear you saying, oh, she's got money, she could get away. Because everybody likes to think that just as long as you have money and you have people who love you, then you can get away from an abusive relationship. And people fail to understand the manipulative nature of an abusive relationship. Because people in abusive relationships are not happy. Shocker. They're not. They don't want to be in that relationship. They don't want to be treated like that. They are manipulated. They are gaslit. Their reality is called into question every time they feel like they're being too dramatic. They feel like maybe they can't trust themselves. They feel like maybe the threats that they receive are real. My dad threatened to kill us if we ever tried to get away and report him to Child Protective Services or the police. He said that eventually he would get out and he would kill us, because he said that we were no good for the world if we had gotten that bad. And I believed him for a really long time. I did not seek therapy as much as I needed to when I had the ability to do so for a long time, because I was afraid that they would report him, because there was things that were within the statute of limitations, and I knew about the mandatory reporting laws. I was afraid they would report it and then he would come and kill me. I know now that he wouldn't, but it has taken me 10 years of being away from him to figure that out and believe it and to not be afraid of him. It took 10 years for me to not be afraid of him anymore. And I need you to understand that, because Usha Vance is never going to read your comments, but your friends in abusive relationships are. The fact that she gets blamed so much and no one recognizes the signs of abuse is both disgusting and heartbreaking to me. And I hear people say she's the one who married him. He didn't used to be what he is now. If you recall, he used to be very anti-Trump. He called Trump Hitler. He changed much of who he was after he was given the vice presidency. It's not just Usha Vance. I hear the same thing about Melania Trump, as if she hasn't been trafficked her entire life. I hear the same thing about Ivanka Trump, as if she hasn't been abused by her father her whole life. And I am not saying that any of these women don't engage in problematic behavior. I know for myself, while I was still in my abusive father's home, I engaged in a lot of problematic behavior, and I am not making excuses for it. I am saying that we are not examining the whole picture, and we are not giving the correct attention where it needs to go. And I see so many things now about like repealing the 19th Amendment. And speaking of my own problematic behavior, I used to think that that was a good idea. I was brainwashed into thinking that that was one of the worst things that happened in our society, was giving women the vote. I really did think that it was super problematic. My dad had the idea that the original way that voting was set up was that you had to be a property owner and you had to be a man. He left out the part about being white, of course. But only male property owners could vote. And he said then they opened it up to everyone, and now everything's terrible. And my dad would tell my mother and me and my sisters how to vote. Every time an election came around, he would take the local paper that had the ballot with everyone on it who was running, and he would mark it, and he would give it to us, and we would take it down to the polling booth, and we'd have to leave it in the car, but we'd review it just before we went in, and we would all vote the same way that he was voting. And he would joke to people all the time that he got 4 extra votes because of his wife and 3 daughters. When I saw the ads prior to the 2024 election with women going to the voting booth and looking at each other and kind of nodding and saying that no one has to know how you vote, it hit home for me pretty hard, because I remember a few elections where I did not want to vote how my dad told me to vote, and I was really scared that somehow he would be able to find out, because he was really good at gaslighting us into believing that he could find out any information anyway that he needed to. And I believed him for a really long time. Those kind of intimidation tactics keep you small, they keep you afraid, and they keep you stuck. Because if you believe that, you're not going to do anything that might put you at odds with your abuser, because being at odds with him meant violence. It meant a lack of safety. You never knew what he was going to do. He was, and I'm sure probably still is, though my mother did tell me that since we've all moved out, me and my sisters, that he's been so much calmer. And I was like, yeah, he doesn't have to control as many people now. We have to confront our own problematic behavior, of course. I think our own internalized misogyny is a huge part of that as women. As I mentioned, I thought, yes, the 19th Amendment should be repealed. I also have been guilty of making fun of other women's appearance, and I've seen that so much lately. My husband sent me a video that Millie Bobby Brown did. He's been getting me to watch Stranger Things, and he sent me this clip she did addressing all of these articles that were talking about her appearance and making fun of her, and or interviewing these other actors or actresses and asking what they thought about her appearance. And then there was the Vanity Fair piece about the White House. And I think that the Vanity Fair piece about the White House was great. I think it was beautifully done. It was artistic in the best way. It was a political commentary without words. The thing that really bothered me so much about it, not a one of those people looked good. They all looked terrible. And almost all I heard about was Catherine Levitt and her lip injections and her aging skin. There are so many things you can say about Catherine Levitt that are all true and have nothing to do with her appearance. Catherine Levitt lies for a living. She just gets up in front of the American people and tells whatever lies she has been told to say. She says it with so much audacity and confidence that you wonder if she actually believes them herself. There's a lot you can say bad about Catherine Levitt that has nothing to do with her appearance. And the Vanity Fair piece came out, and all I saw was people making fun of her aging skin and her lip injections. And that was one of the critiques of Millie Bobby Brown, was that she looked older, and also she had clearly had some Botox and some lip injections. For women, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you get Botox and lip injections, they're going to tell you how terrible you look, that you've got all this filler and these Botox and you look fake and robotic and all of this. If you don't get it, then they're going to make fun of you and tell you how awful you look, and you're not aging gracefully and you look old, and you should just, hide your face away or get some help with it. There's no winning for women, because in a patriarchal society, youth in women is praised and fetishized to a disgusting degree. This is why you see so much pedophilia, because they don't want fully grown women. I can't count how many times I've heard from Alpha Bro podcasts that after a woman turns 26, she's done, which is ironically the age typically in which your prefrontal cortex fully develops. We have fetishized female youth to the point that women and girls are not safe ever in society. And I do mean ever. There is no point in general. I'm generalizing here. I'm not saying there are no safe men or no specific safe places. But you look at what should be the safest place for anyone is your home. And that is where most girls are sexually abused. And usually by a family member. There is nowhere safe anymore. The fact that that is true is felt by women everywhere, whether they acknowledge it or not. And the women who buy in to conservative ideology and the whole misogynistic way of thinking know it in their bodies, even if they won't acknowledge it in their minds, because they think that they can make themselves safe by, dressing a certain way or being quieter, not engaging in politics as much, not engaging in conversation as much, not being contrary or whatever. They think that they can keep themselves safe by complying with the system that wants to subjugate them. And so patriarchy doesn't just hurt women, because patriarchy, in how much it subjugates women and how much it wants to take away from women, teaches men that they're not good enough without saying it directly. Because if you have to keep women down in order for you to thrive, you don't have anything you're bringing to the table that's worth having. If women in the workforce is so problematic for men, that means that men aren't bringing much to the workforce. If women voting is causing problems for men, that means that men are not looking out for the interest of everyone, only themselves. Patriarchy diminishes men to nothing but spoiled little boys. And I'm not saying that they all are spoiled boys. I'm saying that is how patriarchy treats them. Though I will say that is true of a large majority of men. I know more women than I don't who have to mother their husbands because asking him to be an adult and a parent is just a little too much for a fully grown man, and so she has to do everything for him. She has to walk him through everything that needs to be done. If things need to be done around the house, she has to tell him or ask him specifically, because he cannot use his grown-up eyeballs and look and see that laundry needs to be done, or dishes need to be done, or the trash needs to be taken out, or whatever. He cannot be a parent and know, oh, it's lunchtime and my wife is out, so I should figure out something to feed my children for lunch. It's laughable if it weren't so heartbreaking and infuriating how infantilized men have become because of patriarchy. Because that's woman's work has been repeated for generations upon generations, to the point that men don't know how to be adults. As much as you can blame parenting styles for that, I am both an example and a big believer in the fact that just because you are raised a certain way does not mean that is how you have to live. You can do better. You can question how you were raised. You can question the things that you were raised with, the ideas that you were raised with. And you can examine if this is the most loving way to show up in the world, if this is the most responsible way to show up in the world. And very few men actually do that. I see a lot more women questioning it than men do, which makes sense because for men, living in patriarchy is a cakewalk. It might not be empowering, but it sure is easy. For women, living in patriarchy is dangerous. And this is why we see women bucking it more than men. It hurts both genders, and it hurts all of the other genders too. I mean, I don't mean for this to be just a binary. It hurts everyone. Patriarchy hurts everyone every single time without fail. It is an oppressive system of society that treats people as nothing more than producers. And I've heard so many times that capitalism is the economic structure that supports patriarchy, and that's absolutely true because, again, it treats people like producers. Women produce the babies, men produce the goods or the wealth or whatever. It is necessary to reduce humanity into nothing more than a machine that gives output in order for this structure to survive. I don't know that I will ever see the end of patriarchy in my lifetime, or the end of capitalism in my lifetime, at least not in my country. I hope that we can work with each other towards a better future, and to keep in mind our humanity and the humanity of others in everything that we do. This episode's a little shorter than they usually are, but I hope that it has been helpful for you. I hope it's made you think a little bit, and there's my dog. I hope that you will join me next week on the podcast as we both continue to work on our mosaic in progress. Please remember, follow me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/mosaicinprogress. You can find all my links at linktree.com/mosaicinprogress. And I will see you all next week.